It was a Wednesday when the shooting happened, and there was another big political shooting that happened that day. And kids like can't wear, they pick their shoes based on if they will light up, if they can run in them, if there's something that will slip off easy and quietly. It gets insane here. And so it's terrible because then, like, as the kid therapist, we don't have, like, we have support and like I'll
Yeah.
hold space for that. You know how often I look at kids and say, I'm sorry that we failed you. We have failed you.
Um, when you go beyond the surface and into the depths of who you truly are, you will rise. Stacy, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy, so excited to have you here. I want people to just get a feel for who you are. And instead of just like tell us about you, I really would love for you to share a little bit about your mission and your purpose that you're working with right now in this lifetime.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So, my name is Stacy Schaffer. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the Denver, Colorado area. And I've been in private practice for about 20 years. And I'm a kid, teen, young adult therapist. And they're not intimidated by me because I'm pretty short. Actually, you can't really tell that right now. But, and so usually when kids are 11, they tower over me. So that's
Mhm.
about where we're at. And so it is my mission to help people be less hurting adults, because all the time I think we hear kids are resilient, but like, what are the adults in counseling talking about? Like their childhood. And
Yeah.
so there's a big gap in there. Then I like to help fill that in so that adulthood isn't as hard, because that would have changed things a lot for me if I had a Stacy when I was 10.
So I really would love, I know you've written a book and the place that I kind of want to begin, but also I know that a big part of your book is about not really sharing your story for about 3 decades. And I really would love to start with just first and foremost, why did you, I guess, why did you not share your story for such a long time, for 3 decades?
Yeah, well, that was really intentional when I was about 13. And so in my intro to the book, I like talk about the whole outline of my story. And so the biggest like pain was when I was 11. And so I returned home from that, and I can talk about whatever you want in relation to that. But I returned home and I physically remember, I can feel in my body the moment when I was at my front door and all this trauma had happened. All this trauma. And I told myself, Stacy, because that's what I call myself, because my name, like, that was then, this is now. We are starting over. And at that time, my mom was dying of breast cancer. She ended up dying when I turned 22. But she was dying. And I was like, and we're gonna focus on taking care of her because I'm an only child. And so we're not gonna go there because there was not space, there were not people to hold what I needed. No one around me could hold what I needed. And I sensed that. And so I was like, we are going to become, and I refer to a lot as shiny. I'm like, we're going to be the best at all the things. And because if you're the best at all the things, nothing bad can ever happen to you ever again. Which, spoiler alert, that's not accurate. But I was like, it was carefully curated where I didn't reference anything from my childhood to to anybody new. Like it was like life started at like a teenagehood, and that's what I talked about. And so in my head, I'm just doing a whole new life. I mean, we're just gonna start over. And so it didn't feel relevant, but the rumor is what we bury still emerges, and it comes out sideways in our behavior and our relationships. And so It eventually showed up.
Couldn't escape it. That's for sure.
Tried real hard, let me tell you.
Yeah. Wow. And so what then, as it started to come up, what then shifted for you to have that courage to, I guess, maybe finally put it into words, especially did it come before the book? Was it the book that was that first time that you were sharing it? What did that look like for you? And also, why was it in your experience? I'm always so curious. Why was it such a healing process for you to be able to finally start to share that part of your childhood?
Yeah, because I think when there's buried shame and when there's trauma, we make up stories and a narrative about it all, right? And the most common one, I think, is no one would ever really love me if they knew. People would treat me different if they knew. Because still, abusers don't carry the shame that they should. It's the victims, right? And the survivors. And so I think that, yeah, it was like dinner party where people are like, "Oh my gosh, this thing happened. Did I tell you I got into like trouble with this in middle school?" And then someone's like, "Oh my gosh, did I tell you I did this?" And then I said, "Oh my gosh, did I tell you guys when I was kidnapped for a year, like sent away?" It's like forks drop and that awkward record stopping, and everyone's like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I never really mentioned that." I was in a safe enough community to hold that, but I was like, "Oh, maybe I should look at that. Maybe I should look and so he's like, "Oh, yeah, I think there's things to talk about because my career has been built a lot on grief. My mom dying when I was young, and I'm my only living relative. Everybody has died, but I'm very loved. So usually people are like, I am super supported. Don't worry about that. So I'm an expert on grief." And so, yeah, I'm transparent as a clinician to talk about grief.
Mm,
That's where we stop. And then I was like, "Oh, maybe there's other stuff to look at." Um, so then I was like, "Well, yeah, maybe I should look into my own counseling." And it's one of my pillars of belief that therapists should be doing their own therapy at some point in their journey. Case in point. And so started doing the hard work of like, oh yeah, this thing that I didn't talk about for a really long time and the patterns that have now been built for 3 decades that I'm trying to help kids avoid falling into.
yeah. I'm curious with so obviously you already had your career as a clinician before you actually started sharing your story. Do I have that right? So what did that look like for you after you start? I'm curious of what shifted in your practice. Did you notice anything different from when you allowed that like vulnerability and you started to unpack it and how that changed in your practice?
Yeah, and I feel because I'm still actively doing my own work. God bless
Yeah.
Melissa. And so it's important to me to continue that. And a kid will say to me something to the tune of, "Do you think I'm crazy because I'm in counseling?" And I'm like, "You have a grand therapist." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "And actually, truth be told, you have a great grand therapist because everybody who's good in this profession is doing their own work because it's hard. Have you been outside?"
Yeah.
And so I think that it continues to show up in the more that I'm integrated into self, the more authentic I'm able to show up. I think that it exponentially benefits my clients that I'm real. What did one kid say the other day? "You get angry?" And I was like, "I kickbox, I punch bags so I don't punch people." You've met people, right? Of course I get
Mhm.
angry. And so I think as a carefully curated clinician, I have been angry once upon a time,
Yeah.
but then I breathed and was better.
Yeah, I get what you mean though. I think that's always a testament. I think we hear so often of just vulnerability and being raw and being authentic. But I think that really goes to show in just your practice and the way that you show up and to literally see that different shift, it's so spot on because it normalizes it for children. Right?
Right.
They're thinking they're crazy for feeling the emotions that they're feeling. And that breaks my heart, to be honest, to think about that. We would never look at a child and say, no, you're crazy. You're crazy for feeling all these things. No. And to just normalize it and be so just a human in that process. Yeah, I think it's just so beautiful.
Yeah, I often, because I meet with parents first with intake. And so I
Mm.
always tell them, I want you to frame counseling as it's this gift you're giving your child, as opposed to there's something wrong with you. And then,
Oh,
like, because can you imagine at some point in your childhood journey to have a clinician? Would that not have changed your story?
mm,
At least a good one, right? And so in my book, chapter 15 is they're all hashtags, but it's called hashtag get your own Stacy, doing your inner work. Because I had a kid yell that at their dad in my waiting room. Like dad was being super unhealthy. And get your own Stacy. And he didn't and probably won't. But it spoke to like she's like, you need to look at you, dude. I might be 8, but like look at you.
yeah. Oof.
Because they're watching. Just
Yeah.
saying. Just
They
saying.
truly are. And that's such a powerful thing when it comes down to, when we talk about even just like the generational trauma and our lineage and that passing down, it's a huge testament where if our parents are not doing the work, of course, we're going to be probably a little bit resistant to
Yeah.
go to a therapist. It's not going to be normal. But I feel like we're probably the generation that is normalizing therapy and having that support. Our children are gonna, we're probably that's gonna be one of the big things that we go to as, for our children not even just straight therapy, but just finding those spaces for just intentional, yeah, just intentional. I think of circles and community and ways that they can really be in themselves, be in their emotions, and the emotional intelligence that's going to just come out from these generations that are being raised right now.
Yeah, it's amazing how they're removing the stigma. But yeah, my mom died in 2001
Yeah.
and she would I mean I would imagine would have evolved over time, but she would be so confused about my profession. Like be so
Mm,
like, what? She was a dental hygienist. She knew like, teeth, you can see teeth.
y-
Brush your teeth.
gotcha.
But that would be really confusing. But today's generation is, I believe, that is saving lives because the stigma of mental health, like, forget about it. I will tell them in our first session, if you see me in public, you can say hi to me, but I can't say hi to you first. You might be with a friend and they might be like, who is that? And why does she wear so much purple? And those are questions you can't answer because I don't know. I just like it. And almost with 100% accuracy, kids will say, but why wouldn't I just say you're my therapist? And I'm like, well, you can. I just can't. And so kids are like, all my friends see therapists.
Wow.
And they're like, I got a phone call once. My third grader was told by another third grader on the playground about you. And there she's like, is that the cutest referral you've ever received in your life? I'm like, I do believe
Oh
it.
my gosh. That's so true. That is
So
the
cute.
most incredible referral.
She was just like, you should feel better if you saw Stacy.
Yeah. I love that. So
It's beautiful.
yeah, I want to talk more about the grief aspect because I know that's a big part of your journey and your story. And I know grief is really something that can shape our identity in many ways. And I resonate that because I've also experienced loss at a young age. And then
Mm.
it felt almost like, it sounds weird, but it almost felt like a snowball. Once I had the experience that first loss, it was just next, next, next,
Mm.
next. But I kind of say it was one of the best teachers for me to experience grief at such a young age. Obviously, I don't want to have lost that person that I lost at such a young age, but it really teaches you about life and appreciating life. But I'm curious for you in losing especially your mom at such a young age and having to navigate that, especially not having siblings. How did that shape your identity, your world, your behaviors? How did that shape you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, now there's so many resources, but
Yeah.
when she was dying, because I learned the term anticipatory grief, because
Yes.
she had a really long battle with breast cancer, really
Right.
long battle, and 17 surgeries, and it was really hard. And so learning along that time different things, I think that was really helpful. That grief happens before the event. And so I learned at that time, nobody around me was really equipped about how to handle it. People would tell me they in it with good intention. Well, does it make you feel any better? I had a fight with my mom today. I'm like, it sure doesn't, actually. Thanks though. And so I think that it definitely puts things into perspective, but I'm so fiercely independent, which it's a double-edged sword, right? And so I think in learning how to let people in to be interdependent instead of codependent or independent, that's been tricky because I'm like, I got it, but we're not designed to do life by ourselves. It'd be
Yeah.
cool if we had little bubbles. I'd take one.
Yeah.
But it just the bereavement world, especially the children's bereavement world, it's just really real. It's really real. We use authentic terms and get to kind of the heart of the matter. And it's less about, I'm upset about my hair today. It's what do I do about homecoming because I have nobody to be excited for me. And it's so the real nitty gritty of the conversations.
Yeah. I think that that whole independence piece is I mean what you said, right? About it being a double-edged sword is there's so much truth to it. And I think this more so comes up for me in my own experience, especially this year, of just really recognizing how much and where I learned how to be independent
Mm.
and how it's almost been a little bit of a downfall. It's
Sure, sure.
right. And it comes from a coping mechanism in a way because, of all the different pieces, right, that come with that. And do you find that that's kind of been a navigating that in your journey and learning how to, like you said, I love, interdependent and independent,
Yeah.
codependent, like just learning how to navigate that?
Yeah, it's funny, like, I thought of this, but, my freshman year roommate in college, Monica, we're still friends to this day, and I will always remember this. But the only fight we got into as roommates was, it was about returning the little mini fridge because you had to, like, rent them and return the mini fridge, and she was like, "I got it." And it was, like, I don't know, 15 minutes till, and I was like, oh no, she's nowhere to be found, and we're gonna get charged, and the sky's gonna fall. And so I was like, I'll just do it. I'll just do it. And so I took the dog, and so we ran into each other. Like she was coming back for it, and she was like, "You are not the only one that is competent at things." And she's like, "I said I got it." I think of that conversation all the time. That it's like you're not the only one who is competent at things. Because there is truth to that, right? And I think that there can be an arrogance when we like you're the only one that can do the things. And I mean, I would prefer to do the things so I know they get done right. But in order to be an effective member of teams and society, you have to share. But I'm an only, you have to share. And so
Yeah.
in learning that, um, I've had to like myself up, dust myself off, but it doesn't negate me from being an active participant in community.
Yeah. What I thought of is just hearing you say that and how you often go back to that conversation and those words that she shared because what I think of in this moment, what a gift that she said those words to you. Probably not in the moment, didn't feel like that. But relationships are a mirror for us. And when we are triggered by things, when we're shown things, when um if we can get out of our own ego and get out of our own weight, we can actually see where these things are becoming possibly a hindrance, or they actually are getting in our way, right? And I think for me, in a way, that independence piece I saw very much in my partnership and in my relationship of just, you know, I guess in a way not fully, it's new almost to ask for support. That's not something that I was ever used to because I grew up in a single parent household. And so my mom, she did it all. And so it's like a man can't show up for you because I never had a man
Right.
in my life even exemplify that,
Sure. And it was a model.
Exactly. Wasn't modeled. I had that story. I had the proof. I had the evidence that my dad didn't stay. And then there was lots of like other men that came up, it came into our world, whether it be other partners my mom was with, or even my sisters, because I have two older sisters. None of them showed up. Right. And so I had the evidence that like, you got to do shit on your own.
Yeah.
You can't rely on
Figure it out.
anyone. Right. But then it's interesting. And I think when we allow ourselves to see every single relationship that we have, especially our very most like intimate, close relationships, we can learn so much about ourselves in those relationships.
For sure. They give me a mirror. You're like,
Exactly.
I didn't want to see that.
But it though awakens a lot of stuff from childhood. I feel so much us as adults, we're always, like you said at the very beginning, we're always going back to our childhood. We're always going back to the shit that we didn't deal with, the stuff that came up for us. And I'm curious with that too, working with children, what have you seen as those signs that reveal that a child or children are carrying some sort of trauma or even grief?
Yeah. Well, you don't get the joy of dealing with America and our gun control problem.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty terrible. My office is not too far from the latest one. That was at
Wow.
Evergreen High School. I see people in the Evergreen community. This problem that we're having
Mhm.
because I feel our kids are getting dysregulated going to school because we can't seem to get a handle on protecting our kids. And so they'll say to me things like some of the girls will be like, I'm scared to take care of what I need to as a female because if I go to the bathroom, I could be locked out of the classroom if the timing was wrong. They pick their shoes based on if they will light up, if they can run in them, if there's something that will slip off easy and quietly. It gets
Oh
insane
my
here.
gosh.
It is insane.
That
And
breaks my heart.
so it's terrible because then as the kid therapist, like we have support and like I'll
Yeah.
hold space for that. But you know how often I look at kids and say, I'm sorry that we failed you. We have failed you.
Um,
And so there's so many things that the kids of today, I mean, at least America, the kids of today are facing different than when I was a kid. They'll
yeah,
ask me, what would you do or how did you feel during lockdowns? And I'm like, I am really sorry that this is your world. That wasn't the world I
I
lived in.
know. I
It
know. Yeah.
wasn't. And I cannot imagine having to worry about your math test and that.
Mhm.
So I feel like American kids, they have it pretty rough with, that component. But universally, your kids and our kids have social media to contend with.
Yes.
And so
Exactly.
that's an issue all into itself.
Yeah. That's such a challenging part, putting that into perspective of just, of course, especially with all the gun control and all that stuff. And also, yes, social media. These are factors that we didn't have to deal with. And the parents of these children didn't have to deal with.
Correct.
So it's navigating this whole different new world. And I think a big piece, at least if, let's say, for example, I mean, I don't have children yet, but if I was in that circumstance, I think I would have to be so brutally honest to say, you know what? I actually don't know what it means to grow up. in this? I don't know, and to be honest about that as a parent, I feel like is but let's, in a way it's that conversation of I don't know what this look, but let's navigate this together.
Yeah.
Let's do this together. And my God, just that acknowledgement piece. Again, it goes kind of what we talked about already too, that acknowledgement. You're not crazy to be even feeling any of these things, to be worrying about these things. You have everything, that you have the evidence here to show that, it's scary. And man, it truly breaks my heart. But I think, I don't know, that's what I speak to. How do you think parents, I guess that generation of the parents, can better support the younger generation?
Yeah.
Parents, and
That
even as aunts and uncles, like it's not
right.
even just teachers, all of us who are showing up for this next
Sure.
generation. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. Like there's actually a chapter that I wrote I'll call hashtag truth bombs. And one of the truth bombs is when we try so hard to be relatable to kids, we become unrelatable. And I say exactly that. Like, sure, parents say, I was a kid once too. Sure, you had to do middle school, you had to do insecurity, you had to do bullies, like all of those things. But what you didn't have were that they all track each other. There's so many ways they can hurt their own feelings now. I've seen some mean girl texts, like some group threads, and I'm just like, that's bad. And so I think that that's exactly that. Yeah, I speak to that, like because you like have them shut down when you're like, I was a kid once too. And the attempt is to be like, you're not alone and normalizing like it's awkward to be 12. But it's a different 12. It is a different 12. And so I think that it is important to stay up on their world. It's important. You can't know everything, obviously, but I think it's really important to try and to be a tourist in their world as opposed to acting like you're a native. Like,
Ooh.
show me like what is it like for you? What's one of the questions in the book that I say to approach your kids saying, help me understand what it's like to be you. Help me in lots of softer ways over, time and stuff. But that's like the heartbeat of a question. Help me understand you as opposed to I get you. I know. You don't know. You don't know.
Exactly. And I think this is such a big part of, in a way, what's the word that I'm looking for? For some reason, I want to say disrupting, but I don't even know if that's the right word, but just the dynamic of parent child.
Mm,
It's true. There is that dynamic, parent child, and especially too of, the role as a parent is you're keeping your child alive and safe. Like there are facts 100%. And at the same time, not always seeing your children as the child, and
mhm.
allow them to teach you. Be open to them being a teacher for you as well. That, I guess, like humility in a sense too, to say, I'm not, I don't know everything. Yes, I'm the parent, but I don't know everything. And that, I think, are some of the things that our parents didn't do for us, but also it's not to blame either. It's just they did it. We didn't have that dynamic either. And it's because they didn't. But in a way, we have these resources now, our generation, to be able to see how that, when we change our dynamic and we change the approach, how that changes the relationships. It's like
Yeah.
something's not working in ways. So we got to do
Well, and
something different.
yeah, no, that's so good because I think even now, like this generation of parents is actually apologizing to their kids about
Hmm.
like valid things to apologize for. I like, girl, I don't know about you, but I was never apologized to ever, and there were some serious offenses that we need to say sorry for. But I have this family that I see that I adore. I see two of their kids, and they came to me like feeling they had messed up on a situation. And I was like, let me give you some perspective. Like, about, let me give you this case study. Let me tell you how this parent handled this. And I was like, that was my mom. And I was like, so don't sit here and tell me you're screwing up your child. You're coming to a clinician to say, help me. I have so much respect for parents who bring their kids to counseling because it is so humbling. I don't know what to do with this child that I love. Parents always call me and say, I think I've screwed up my kid. And I'm like, well, they're being raised by humans. So
Exactly.
there is a bit of a margin of error.
Yeah, it's
Like,
true.
and I think that, the more we know, like the better we do. And so I think we have more information now.
Exactly. And also I think it's important for as parents that are taking their children to counseling and making this effort of doing things differently for their children, being very conscious about it, that this is how this was handled for me and I don't want it to be the same. So I'm going to ask for the support. I'm going to do things differently. We're so hard on ourselves already as human beings, add a life that we have to care for on top of that, and that guilt that starts to show up. But holy shit, to celebrate and acknowledge you as a human, that you're doing a good job. I saw a video today of a mom, and you could tell that she started recording mid probably conversation or whatever the case may be. And, people have certain opinions on this is what decided to do is record the conversation. She was just recording herself, but you could hear her child.
Right.
But it was so beautiful. She had forgotten something at the school. She had completely forgotten. I think said she put it on the wrong day or whatever. And the daughter was just so upset and crying and was so heartbroken. But the mom was there also heartbroken, felt so bad, and was just apologizing. And I'm so sorry, and not making any excuses. Just, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry. And here's what we're going to do to make sure this never happens again. I'm heartbroken. It was such a beautiful video that I saw today. And to acknowledge we're human, to acknowledge we're freaking human is such a
Right.
beautiful
Because,
thing.
yeah, because like school would be like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
You forgot your thing. There's kids starving in Africa, moving on.
Yep.
And so then the grief gets compounded, because they're like, that. No, I feel bad about how you talked to me.
Reacted. Exactly. Now we feel guilty for even bringing it up. And that's where we start to learn that I can't feel these things. I can't bring this up. I can't talk about it. And then the explosions happen because we're bottling
Big.
things up. No wonder, right? And so one last thing that I want to ask you, continuing on this piece around the trauma and the silence, what do you believe changes in a family, in community? Because we talked about both, when even just one person decides to speak up and start telling their truth and becoming this raw version of themselves. You stepped into that. How do you feel that changes our families and our communities?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, it's a whole systems dynamic, right? It makes me think when you said, how does it change our community? Someone that I grew up with 5 houses down, Sam. It's a whole another episode, what happened the year I was 11. But I did not run away. And she came to my house looking for her little friend. And I guess my mom slammed the door in her face and said, I ran away. And I didn't run away. And so then she, I guess, went to her house, and her dad was like, sometimes families have secrets. And anyway, I came home after a year. We were in different crowds. She was like 40 Spice, yes, Talkie Spice. She moved to a town that's like an hour and a half away in 2017. Um, she was like, hey, let's meet up. And so we met up midway, and we're catching up. And she's like, hey, so what happened that year that you disappeared? And I
Mm,
wasn't talking about it yet. And she's like, well, this happened, that I never knew that conversation had happened.
right.
And I changed the subject and cried the whole way home. Soon thereafter, I started to do my work. And anyway, when I wrote my book, and then I got the offer in like January, and my book release party was in May. And so I messaged her and I was like, hey, so remember that? I was like, I'm ready to talk about it now. And she like came to my book release party, and like everyone was like sobbing when I was like telling the story. And she has told me that it has opened up conversations in her family because like they knew something was wrong, missing. And like it was before social media, so you can't fact check. Well, her
Hmm.
mom's not posting about it, like it was before that. And so
Yeah.
she said it has fundamentally changed the conversations in my family that you've been open about what happened because it did impact them,
Yeah.
like, and so it is made like I think a lot of pieces like fall together for her
Mm,
because like as a child like she's saying one thing but I feel something different. And
mm,
so I think about that that story arc, the Sam story arc, as like a really significant happening as a result of me telling the truth.
yeah. Hmm. That's such a
So
beautiful thing.
it's crazy. Like and like, to think that for so many years she's just wondered,
Hmm.
and so I'm pretty open about it in my book. So now
Love
she
that.
knows.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that you got to a place and you shared that. And you also got to experience that moment and to see in real time that ripple effect of what happens when we do choose to step in and to share our stories. Even though it can be so hard and that vulnerability can be so scary. It's just that payoff. I feel time and time again just outweighs that fear that we're experiencing. That I
Mhm.
mean, it's often our ego keeping us safe, and I understand that. And but time and time when I talk to people who have written books and who have told their story, um, that's always the thing is they have this one story, this one moment, and it's like, yeah, does it make sense now to share your story and
Um,
tell your story? I'm sure it all makes sense now.
Yeah, she's like, I always felt really protective over you, and now things make sense.
Yeah.
And so I'm all about authenticity, and I think appropriate authenticity is
Mm,
really healing. People throw around the term trauma dumping, and that's different.
yes.
And so I think there's truth in earned vulnerability. And I wrote in my book, it's important to speak from your scars and not your wounds.
Yeah.
Your open wounds, we're gonna not gush over people and make it all yucky. We can speak to times in which that have healed enough to be able to communicate about it.
And that's up to us to know when we're ready to
Yeah.
set those boundaries to just acknowledge, right? To give ourselves that space to process before we're ready to share things. I'm really glad that you said those things because I think that's such a big part. If there's that uncomfort when it comes to, oh, I'm telling these things and sharing these things, and maybe it's just a little bit more needs to be processed. And if you don't feel ready, and if it just doesn't make sense yet, and it just doesn't feel like you're on the other side of that quite yet, then letting it. Sometimes we feel, oh, I got to share this on social. It's like, stop with that. That's not what it has to be. You get to dictate that.
Yeah, and I always tell kids, so I have two rooms. The other room's like therapeutic Disneyland. This one is more chill. But both rooms have a right called I pass. So I always tell them I'm a therapist, so I'm going to ask nosy questions to try to help you feel better. If there's something you don't want to answer, not now, not yet, not ever, you say pass. And that is always honored. And
Oh,
I
I
feel
love.
like that my impression is that they'll circle back to it themselves, and they usually do,
Yeah.
but that's really important that they don't feel I'm going to ask the one thing they don't want to speak to.
Yeah. And that's honored. I love that. So I love ending episodes with these three questions. And when I look at doing this work and the inner work, I really have kind of distilled it down to these three things, and it's curiosity, courage, and compassion. And so I'm going to kind of ask you three questions. What is something that you're currently curious about in your own healing or growth?
I'm curious about, and I think I'm doing some work around like as I'm like posting more about my book on like social media and trying to really connect with my own truths to show up authentically. I am doing my own work around the mother wound and about complicated grief, that like you can still grieve, but really acknowledge that it wasn't good when you had it. And so like and how that continues just to impact me and my how I show up in the world, that it's not I'm not grieving, I'm not sad because I don't have a mom anymore that was nurturing. The reality is she never was nurturing.
Right.
And so that's I'm working through some of that mother wound stuff just to be more honest. You can still grieve, but it's more grief of what you never had as opposed to what was.
Yeah. You know what was coming through as I heard you say that? I'm like, a year's time, I feel like we can have a conversation about that and see what has come up and what's have
Let's check it.
evolved, right? And what's
Yes.
evolved for you in that.
Yeah. You're like, so it's Mother's Day 2026. Tell me more.
Yeah, tell me more. What's one risk or brave choice that you've made recently that's kind of shifted everything for you?
Love her so much, but I hired a social media coach and to help promote my book because that's what you do in the world now. There's not you don't go from town to town, I guess. I would prefer that in my little carriage, but I'm showing up more online
Mm,
and I don't love it. I do love being on podcasts. I do love that, but I don't love making videos talking about my book or about myself, but that's the way it works.
mm,
And that's the way people feel connected. So I'm leaning more into embracing it as it like because it's the visibility wound, like leaning more
mhm.
into that instead of internally temper tantruming every time I need to post.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And so, last thing is, where in your life are you learning to give yourself more grace?
Mm, I think probably piggybacking off that I think that I'm not really sure what I'm doing in the world. Some of my teenage clients are, I can tell you some trends to do. And I'm like, I'm gonna hard pass on that, but thank you. Give me myself grace that it's new to start to develop an online presence. And I feel like I'm speaking into the void. If anything, it gets better. And I have to remember and this is what my Sarai told me, my coach, that you need to remember you're not selling you. You're putting your product out there that's gonna save lives.
Yeah. Mm.
I want to be
And I will
good.
for sure. And we're not perfect, but sometimes it's in that beginning is when we can be playful. So I don't know, that was the first thing
Yeah.
to kind of offer you is instead of how can you bring the play into it? How making it more playful and fun. I feel like this is an essence of you. You have such a playful energy and it's bringing that into it, right? At the end of the day, I feel like then it maybe shifts the relationship
Yeah,
with
no,
it a
I like
little
it.
too. It's hard to that's I think my challenge too. The depth of the content that we want to go into
Yes.
is
Yes.
hard because of the attention
Yeah.
span. So it's finding our ways, aka having a podcast, being on a podcast, This is how we get to go in depth. I'm really grateful to be able to go into the depth that we've been today. And for those that are tuning in and listening, if there's anything that resonated and landed, share and subscribe, follow, and just being part of this community of those of us who are doing things a different way. We're going beyond the surface. We're not scared to do that work and we're not scared to go there. And this is the community and this is the space. So thanks for being here.